Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. Okay, we are implementing equipment right now, so thank you for bearing with me and being patient. The upside is that the microphone works with this new computer, which is great. The downside is that the webcam is shite. So but that doesn't matter. We're not here to look at my cute face. We're here to look at the astrology. We're here to look at the reading, and we're here to look at all of the fun things that I'm going to show you. But it does help to have a face attached to a voice. It's not always necessary, but I personally when I go through content on social media, any kind of video content, regardless of a platform, I really do like to at least be able to identify a face or a persona or an actual person to what I'm hearing. And even if they're not showing themselves in that particular video, especially if you are, if somebody is a radio broadcaster or a podcaster, you're not going to see their face necessarily, but you know that they actually exist and they are a person. So personally, I do like to put myself on the camera. So, but there will be a new webcam coming. I'm just happy that this microphone is working again. So let me know how it's going in the stream. I did a couple test runs, so I just want to make sure that it's actually working now that we're really live. So let me know. I need to see your face. Yeah, I agree. So clearly it's coming through, and the sound is coming through, and I'm so stoked that this microphone is working with this new camera. So this computer that was gifted to me. So a lot more processing power, a lot more memory, a lot more all kinds of things. So an upgrade all around. So welcome to Catalyst Energies, everyone. Welcome back to my subscribers and my consistent viewing audience that you've been here not only for this content, just for your own journey in general. So I really, truly appreciate you and thank you. And if this is your first time here, thanks for stopping by. And I will remind you at the end, but it's always good to remind you now if that you find this content helpful, inspiring, enlightening, or even just entertaining, and you value it, you can hit that subscribe button regardless of what platform you find yourself on. You can hit that like button, you can share this content, and you can comment on it either in the live chat or on the replay. That's also an option. So if you usually watch these videos on BitChute, they changed their platform a little bit, and they've limited the size of the video uploads. And so yesterday's transmission, I wasn't able to upload until I can get some sort of program or software to compress the file a little bit so I can upload it. So hopefully this transmission and yesterday's will be uploaded on BitChute today, if that's where you find your content usually. So, okay, my friends. So lots to talk about as usual today. Getting very grounded. I started my own practice of my attunements. Started with my master attunement this morning, doing my healing attunements at the end of the day. And I'm going to be doing this practice all through the eclipse cycle up until the new moon solar eclipse, which is on the 4th of December. So I'm really inviting people to incorporate some type of purification practice and some sort of grounding practice that is going to sharpen your discernment, clear your channel. And when we talked yesterday about the full moon lunar eclipse and how this is prime time for ritual right now, and the best way I think to counteract that in a positive way is to find something that you can give of yourself through this time. This is, fasting is a really great way, but you can find anything that you normally rely upon, or something that you even need in some ways or think you need, that you can make a conscious choice to sacrifice for yourself. So fasting, again, is a great way to do this, and that can find its expression in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to be fasting from Thursday into Friday for the full moon. So I've talked to other people, a colleague of mine who's working with a particular church right now. Oddly enough, is the church that was involved in the final spiritual battle with Anton LaVey. Wow. They're fasting. They do it every month, apparently, this church. And so they're fasting for 3 full days. That's pretty intense. So whatever your practice is, and, you know, if you are interested in a consultation to really get some sort of protocol in place for you, that is good for you, that speaks to you, that is personal to you, that's something that we can do. I'm going to be offering that actually very soon. That will include a micro reading, as well as a healing attunement, a Reiki healing attunement, and the consultation one-on-one to really answer some questions if you have them, and to really start to put into place or develop your own personal practice and protocol, because I get a lot of questions often from people about how can I deepen my connection to my guides, how can I practice energetic hygiene, what types of practices can I do to deepen my own intuition and to really be very mindful and intentional along my path. So that's going to be something that I'm offering here very soon in terms of a service. So, but in the meantime, I really invite you to develop or to just consider something, anything, even if it's a 5-minute meditation in the morning where you are grounding down into your Earth Star chakra, or a prayer practice, whatever it is. This is a good time to bring it into form. So I'm going to check in with the stream real quick. Okay, everything is working, so I'm really stoked that went so smoothly at this point. Oh my gosh. It took a lot of time to get this dialed in, this whole process of the streaming software and all the settings and how to do it. And now I'm really stoked that time and energy and that work really did pay off. So let's talk about some things. Now, we did get hit with some geomagnetic disturbances. We're going to look at some charts here. We're going to look at the Schumann and add that data to our ever-growing catalog of information and observation. We're going to look more at these earthquakes that keep happening along this one longitudinal line, and just kind of get a sense of what's going on out there that's really going on in here, and track it. It's important to track it. There were, like I said, there's a lot of geomagnetic disturbance. It wasn't mind-blowing, but the thumbnail image for this transmission today is a piece of photography that I'll link in either description box or in the comments to the person's website to make sure that they get credit for their beautiful photography of these auroras. But there was some very distinct geomagnetic activity that produced auroras last night into today, and we're going to look at how the Schumann responded to that, because it was pretty trackable and pretty obvious. And when we get into the intuitive transmission aspect of the transmission, it's going to be important that we really do take a moment to very much center ourselves, because there is a lot of support right now, if we choose to take it, to really see into the underlying structure of life and what makes up life and where our power of manifestation really comes from. And also to some very distinct connections with our moon in Aries moving into Taurus today. And people are reporting some very vivid dreams lately, a lot of guidance coming through these dreams. But also, too, we are kind of open right now, and this is why discernment is so important, because we're going into a time now during this eclipse cycle that is really going to test our discernment. And there's a back end in some ways to being so open, especially from this 1111 gateway that really expanded and felt like a time wave from something not that long ago. And it's important that when these gateways are open, that it goes both ways. And it really is important that we realize that while we're also getting information or guidance or downloads or whatever that we actually need, there's also the possibility of being infiltrated and influenced in a way that can really lead us off of our true path. And showing that it may be a little too good to be true in some ways, but also to it's a good opportunity to practice this discernment, because we're coming into a time now where we're really going to have to step into more of a mastery level with that, and not everybody is going to be in the same place about it, or a safe place. That was a weird Freudian slip, but I think it's really relevant actually, because this is a prime time to be influencing people, influencing the consciousness of each of us, especially those who are opening right now or are newly opening, and really influenced and susceptible to influences that are coming through the astral, coming through our dream state, coming through our intuitive channels. So it's important that we understand what may be an influence that is going to take us off of our pathway. And with the eclipse cycle, there's going to be that level of distortion, as we've talked about many times over. And this is why I'm implementing the practice that I am, because we have to take it to the next level now. And I think this eclipse season is really going to, or this cycle is really going to initiate this. So let's start looking at, I want to start looking at, there we go, the charts, not the charts, but the Schumann resonance for today. So I'm going to, bring myself back down here real quick and bring up what we're going to look at. So there is, we can just look at that right now actually. And it seems like it doesn't want to have my likeness there, so I will take it away, and which is fine. So what we're going to see here is, first we're going to look at the different graphs of the solar weather, and you can see pretty clearly that from yesterday into today, here is some really significant unrest in the geomagnetic effect, and the magnetic field itself is, bouncing back and forth. And then we see an incredible increase in the solar wind speed, right? And also the temperature of the solar wind. And so what we experienced wasn't technically a CME, it just acts like one. It's some sort of transition phase that I would have to go back and really look at. And so I will link to the website that'll give a much better description of what this is in either in the comments or in the description box, and certainly on social media too, so you can get a sense. But you can even see here lots of geomagnetic effect early morning, last night into today, and so it's pretty significant. So when we look at the Schumann resonance in this way, let me make sure that we can see it. Yes, we can see it. So you can see right here in this time frame that is between the 15th and the 16th, you can see that there was, in fact, an amplitude increase up to 25 hertz. So, and where did we find this happening? This is important to pay attention to, because it's going to be roughly around 15, starting at about 13 to 14, 1 p.m. universal time, right? 1300, this is military time, really peaking at 15 to 16, which is about 3 to 4 p.m. universal time. So we're looking at late morning here on the east coast of the U.S. yesterday. So when that really started to amplify. And if we scroll down, we see that just in the same ways that we have been experiencing and tracking them already, we see the increase in amplification. We see an increase almost across the board, except for this one here, in the quality of the Schumann, right? The tone. And the quality of the tone, the amplification, so how loud it is, how big the wavelength of the Schumann resonance is getting louder. The tone is getting higher, or the quality of the tone is increasing, right? And then we find just what we would expect. Look at that, a drop in the frequency itself, meaning the pitch has lowered at the same time. So we see this pretty often with the geomagnetic effects that come from the solar weather. The amplitude increases, the quality of it increases, and just in alignment with it, the frequency, the pitch itself decreases, it drops, and then comes back up again. And we've talked about what this means in terms of actual wave functions, right? The amplitude gets louder, the quality increases, but the only way to really do that is for the pitch to drop it so that it can get louder and keep, and in fact, not even keep the quality, but increase it. So beautiful auroras. This was happening yesterday. Like I said, during the day, we got hit with it. And so there was quite a few revelations, I feel like, that came through yesterday. And it's certainly not going to cease as we look at today's astrology as well. So what I want to show you with the earthquakes today is just kind of, it's been pretty consistent along the same longitudinal line. So let's look at this real quick here. And specifically, we're going to look at time frames. So what I'm doing is looking over the last couple of days. It says the oldest first, right? So we're going to start from, it looks about the 15th. So if you look at around this is when it started to spike, right? About 1300 UTC. So this, again, in Iran, the same place where there have been earthquake after earthquake after earthquake for the last 2 days, roughly. So yesterday, as the Schumann was spiking, we see another earthquake, about 4.5 to 4.4. Right as it's peaking, we see another earthquake that's in the same general vicinity, kind of over here in Indonesia, that's pretty big. The South Indian Ocean, as we talked about, here's that longitudinal coherence here with Iran that has just been going off. And we talked about how this may be some sort of ley line or very strong energetic band that is just getting activated over and over again. Indonesia, again, this is still about 1500 UTC when the amplitude is increasing. South Indian Ocean, same thing. And then we see another one right after the spike in the amplitude over here in Chile, Argentina, excuse me, over here. So other areas that are getting impacted as well. Chile, same thing, 1700, and then it starts to decrease as we go down. There was another one very early this morning, late last night in Laos. So this is over here in this Pacific area. So you can see this cluster over here as well. And then there's some in Hawaii, some in Alaska. So there are longitudinal lines. Now, one thing I will say about this, I want to address real quick is that if you follow suspicious observers and you are in fact tracking their, there we go. If you are in fact tracking their climate, their disaster cycle playlist and really understanding what the projection is for a magnetic excursion, right, which is the magnetic poles of the planet are going to shift 90 degrees. Well, the axis of that is is projected to be the Hawaiian Islands, right? That means Hawaii will not move. In terms of the crust of the planet literally shifting along with the magnetic pole shifting. Well, where's the North Pole going to be? Well, let's go back real quick here. Projected. It's going to be in the Indian Ocean, right around in here. So when the poles shift, right, you're going to find that Greenland's going to be along the equator, as you know, in terms of the planet, and the new North Pole is going to be around here, right? So it's up here, and it's going to go. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to make sure. Yeah, it's going to be the North Pole is up in this area and is going to shift right into here. So again, these are just dots to be connecting, right? That's all we're doing. We're just connecting dots. I really, really encourage you to go to, and I will drop it in social media, and if I can remember, into the description box, to really familiarize yourself with the natural cycles of quote unquote disaster, because they're very measurable, and there's a reason that they are not being actively, pushed out into the mainstream for us to know. But very trackable, and there are more people coming out in the scientific community that are bringing awareness to this. And I think it's important to understand, because it's meant to happen in our lifetime, this magnetic excursion. I personally have had my own visions and dreams about this event in different ways. Very specifically the magnetic excursion, and feeling it in an astral, or maybe in a future timeline. I can't say for sure, but I do know that I have had experiences where I literally felt the shifting of the plates of the planet in real time, and that was remarkable, to say the least. So I think it's important to familiarize yourself with the natural and very measurable cycles of not only the sun, our star, and how it impacts us and our climate and the cyclical changes, but this magnetic excursion and what it actually means. And so the disaster cycle playlist, I think, is just really important to give yourself some time to really focus on here. So I'm going to minimize here, and we're going to come into today's reading. So how is everyone doing? Because we're going to have to really trust some things moving forward here, as we're going to see today's reading, because we do have this double outcome here, which I thought was really interesting. Some things that are a little bit out of alignment, how the readings usually go, but at the same time, I think that it's pretty accurate in terms of what we may be feeling collectively right now, how the guiding light of Aquarius, right, the star, and our ability to be sensitive to the natural cycles, cosmic coherence, is really going to be our guiding light as we move through these times. So I'm curious how people are feeling. I wonder how much Greenland farmland Bill Gates is buying up. Bam. You remember when oh my gosh, do you remember? Do you remember when there was all that talk that President Trump was doing about Greenland, buying Greenland? Do you remember that? I mean, he is just, oh man, I can't even get into that right now about him and his chart. But what I will say is that got brought right up to the surface, not that long ago, a couple years ago, that he was talking about buying Greenland, because it's under the rule, I think, still of Denmark. So, those are some interesting dots that are, I think, would be worth connecting if anybody feels interested in going down that rabbit hole. But again, I wonder who is buying Greenland, who's in control of Greenland, what does that actually look like, and who is responsible for that actual land and the resources. Now, keep in mind, when we see that magnetic excursion happen, and then we'll get into the reading, I promise. We not only does Greenland kind of shift down towards the equator, but you find that Antarctica shifts the other way back up to the equator as well. So, very interesting indeed. It's very interesting. So let's take a moment here to get ourselves grounded and be prepared to receive the intuitive portion of this transmission, because the importance here is not so much of what definitively these cards say, what they look like, but all of this is meant to draw from each of us internally a particular resonance. And so we need to be ready to receive, right? To ground ourselves, to be energetically in a position to receive this part of the transmission so that it's clear, right? And we've talked about this before, that and somebody brought this up to me, it was brilliant, about how playing cards, I had mentioned before that playing cards have been the way that the tarot has been hidden. And somebody had mentioned to me, a colleague of mine had mentioned to me, when you start thinking about like gambling as an addiction, and, playing cards. And, I love playing poker and Texas Hold'em. My dad taught us how to play poker when I was a kid. And I really do like playing poker, and it's an incredibly strategic game. Anybody that knows anything about it knows that it's way more strategic than it may seem. And it's also very intuitive. You have to be able to read people pretty well in order to in order to really play poker well. But again, it's associated with something very insidious and addictive, which is gambling. So again, this came up, and then the Ouija board, how these things are marketed as games, and to young people and to people who are not trained in these occult esoteric arts and practices, who are then opening these doorways. And so again, the tarot, I've been practicing tarot for a really long time, and so it doesn't come without a lot of work on my part to say that I feel fairly confident that I can pull the messages through. But again, these are just cards sitting on a table or on a mat right now. It really has a lot to do with your resonance that is going to open the doorways for yourself. And so it's important that we understand that. So let's take a deep breath in, deep diaphragmatic breath in, everyone. So count of 4. Okay, breath in. And release. Excellent. And remember, this bowl is tuned to C major, which corresponds to the root chakra. So again, root chakra is important right now. We talked about this yesterday. Venus is now in the territory of the Lyran constellation, which means that she is activating the Lyran starseeds and the Lyran resonance and signature, which is very definitively root chakra oriented in terms of security and survival, and being completely confident in that security and survival, because not only the myriad of times that they're like the originators, like they hold the blueprint in a lot of ways, and they are like the seed race of the humanoids, at least in this galaxy. So there is a sense of fearlessness, not out of taking risks that are uncalculated, but from a perspective of, we've been here so many times before, we've been through incarnation over and over and over again, that there's nothing to fear here. So you have to stretch your container a little bit. So Venus being here, we'll talk about this more with the astrology because it's more relevant. I want to make sure that we are prepared to bring this reading forward. So number 1, here's our 3 of Cups, Mercury in Cancer. So one of the things that I one of the things here is, number 1, we're going to find that, let's see here. Sorry, I'm trying to open some documents here because I have my notes, and it's important because when I took these notes, they actually had, I was in a different headspace when I was looking at these notes. Okay. There we go. Thank you for being patient. Here we go. So we have 2 aspects here that are Mercury related. And we talked about yesterday Mercury being kind of like this trickster right now, like, winking at us. I have a secret, and it's about what underlies all the manifestations of life. Remember, Mercury is the shepherd of the souls, right? Mercury, or Hermes, as an archetypal figure, is able to go into the realm of the underworld and come back out without being trapped. Nobody else can do that. And it really does speak to our consciousness and our ability to analyze and to reconstitute those ideas or those concepts through Virgo, right? Mercury rules Virgo. Very connected to Scorpio, by the way. We've made those connections before. So going into the Scorpio realm, he's got a secret to tell, and there's just this winking that I keep seeing from Mercury. Now, we do have Mercury in Cancer, which is our 3 of Cups, and then when we get to the heart of the matter, we're going to have Mercury in Taurus, which is the 5 of Discs, the worry. So there's a lot of this mental energy that is really here, and it's the way that we're focusing on these different aspects in terms of our conceptualization, how our nervous system interacts with the world around us, how we conceive of ideas, how we communicate, how we express these things, how we come to know them, right? To know them. Knowledge is about Mercury and the third house in particular. The sixth house and Virgo is the way that we analyze what we know and to really put it where it belongs and to crunch the numbers, so to speak, to put it through our analysis. Because we do that in terms of our own consciousness in order to create ourselves to be the perfect vessel in order to receive something. So we have this Three of Cups as our causal factor right now of abundance, right? The Mercury in Cancer, it is this first real structurally sound awareness of what the Two of Cups that we had yesterday is really meant to be directed towards. And so it's joy and fulfillment and love and devotion, and it's an awareness, right, of what we know, an awareness of the worth of this love and devotion, and understanding of its meaning is another level of this. And so I think we're starting to come to a knowing, right? An awareness of what these relationships are worth, and the love that it represents. And I know that yesterday there was a lot of inversion and a lot of reversal and some resistance in some ways to what a lot of this watery energy, especially with the feminine. Now we have Mercury here, so we're bringing our mind back into the equation here, and this seems to really help us balance this awareness out, right? It's one thing to feel into it, because we had Venus in Cancer with the Two of Cups. We had the Princess of Cups, which is Venus in the water signs. Now there is more of a mental awareness. I think that our awareness, right, is growing, and it's expanding, and Mercury in Scorpio is making that very possible for us when it comes to how we feel about other people, our sense of love and devotion and joy. So coming into the moment, there is this kind of structurally sound awareness of what this love and devotion really means. Now, what we find as we move on from this point, which almost seems like a natural progression, is the worry about these things. So now we're at the Five of Discs, Mercury in Taurus, right? The worry of a material crisis, an actual material crisis, so an awareness of a material crisis, or a worry about it, right? The constant thinking about what could happen, right? And you can see in this reading that it's directed towards the future. So when we come to this awareness of love and devotion and what it's really worth, and we really start to understand its meaning, and with Mercury in Scorpio right now, it's all about the underlying power of our communion together. We're starting to bring that back to a sense of cohesion within our personal life, because that's what Cancer represents, and our inner life, and that containment system that holds us, so that we can really deepen our relationship to ourselves, deepen that relationship to the immediate environment, and really assess where we belong, where our faithfulness belongs, our loyalty. All of those things are very Cancerian. So we're coming to an awareness of this, and now, though, we find ourselves at the heart of the moment, just like really concerned about losing something. And we talked about a lot of this yesterday, because that was all part of it, is the Tower, right? The sudden realization, the fact that we lose something that brings us to a clean slate, that allows for us to move in a new direction, or to set down new roots, plant new seeds. But when we are aware on some level, and we have this awareness of abundance, of emotional and relational abundance, we find ourselves really worried about what's going to happen in a very material way. And I'm not suggesting that it's all material, but Mercury is really, Scorpio is opposite of Taurus, right? And so as Mercury is moving through Scorpio, really kind of plumbing the depths and bringing it back up to the surface, and whispering those secrets in our ear in some ways, and it through all kinds of things, synchronicities, right? Through different types of all kinds of ways that we're inspired through nature, through our own claircognizance. That is a way that Mercury can speak to us. Clairsentience, that type is just knowing. But the opposite end of that is when we realize what it is, and we start to really get a sense of what is underlying all of these things. The opposite of that is that when we put that type of activity towards what just is, right, without the drive and the urge to come into union, but just to be in alignment with what is, right, that's very Taurus, the alignment to the natural world. We start to hash through it, like, and worry about. So the 5 of discs is, you know, it breaks up the stability of the 4. Absolutely. The 4 of discs, which is power, which is Sun in Capricorn, power, a fortress that surrounds us, that gives us a sense of security. This is breaking it up because we're destroying the structure and the balance of that structure. So there is a material crisis that is weighing heavily on our hearts right now. And certainly it's directed at the future. So this also, the part of the secret that, you know, Mercury in Scorpio is able to give to us is also coming back around to be like, oh, I already know what's coming, based on this ability to go into these depths and really see things, right? It's like looking in the mirror at, you know, once you've passed the Sphinx gate and having to really see what's up ahead. And so we are worrying about it. What could happen in material way? And when we're talking about material, we are talking about resources. We're talking about our actual health. We're talking about our home. We're talking about anything that gives us a sense of security in this material world is represented by the discs. The potential here with this card is the reconsidering of our values and maybe learning to make do with what we do have, or maybe less. And this is also coming through very strongly in terms of the resources. So somebody said to me recently, again, it was just a conversation with a colleague about something in my personal life, and they said that when they were listening to the message, they got a very clear hit, you know, a voice that was just like, winter is coming. Winter is coming, and we know this. And so even though we may be worried and it's sitting very strongly on our hearts, we also, it's directed at what is to come. And we see that we have the Star card as our outcome, even though we also have a lot of confusion in a mental way as part of that as well. So we'll get there, because I want to show you here also what we are working with in terms of our energetic polarity. Because look, here's our 4 of Scrolls. Remember, this was in our guidance in this position yesterday, and now it's moved into our awareness and our energetic rootedness, right? It is in the making itself now embedded in the subconscious realm. It was offered as a gift or a guidance point, and now we've taken the offering in some ways. And we can also see that as the abundance, the Mercury of in Cancer. It can also be, because Cancer is, and the nadir really do represent this part of the axis here, where we draw our personal power from, you know, what is going on at the root and the core of us, you know, where our character really develops. So there is a sense of what we do have, an awareness of what we have, and in terms of this relational, this lattice structure that is the relational, you know, abundance and emotional abundance. And 4 of Scrolls, as we talked about yesterday, as it was in its reversal, we're falling out of our karmic patterns. We are now embracing this as the root and the seed of our creationary power, as moving on to a new trench to dig, an awareness that we actually have somewhere new to go, and that we're in total control of it. And again, I feel like that this Mercury in Cancer and this abundance as our causal factor is really related to the fact that we did actually accept this offer, and collectively, and aligned with it at the very root of who we are, that we can come out of these neural pathways without leaving behind our identity, without leaving behind. This was a big deal. I mean, I feel like the moon crossing Chiron and squared of Venus yesterday was a big part of this, and we really did come out accepting that gift and realizing that we can choose our karmic patterns in conscious ways. So we're falling out of the trench. We have all the resources we need to plant new seeds, right? Because we're not wasting our energy on digging this endless abyss or falling into it or just sitting down there. Now, a difficult separation or change is knocking us out of the trench, as we, acknowledge with that card. What is that card? The Tower. Can't even speak it. The Tower card, right? Something knocking us out of the trench. Now, this is something that may have already occurred. This is something that may be happening right now. This is something that may have happened just yesterday. Or maybe what we're finding is that it is coming back around in this time wave that is being amplified by 1111. I feel like, is not only was it a gateway, but it was a ripple in time, kind of like a gravitational wave that was discovered not that long ago, right? The gravitational wave is like a time wave, so it was amplified with the 1111 aspect opening up. So, but we have to be very conscious not to not go back into these patterns. But we have accepted this. We've taken this offer, and now there are ripple effects. Now, some people, I had this experience, and somebody else presented to me as well, that they are going back. Their dream state and their astral state is connecting them into past situations, maybe alternate timelines that they can alter in this space. And I'm having that experience as well, like going back to old wounds, going back to old dynamics that have been put into place as a result of old wounds that are being they're being addressed right now. And I think that we've consciously and maybe subconsciously, perhaps not fully consciously, that would be at the top of this reading, we are accepting the guidance of falling out of this trench and making a concerted effort not to get trapped back into these patterns. I think this is really, really important. Again, because these patterns are what they bank on. This is what the algorithm is measuring with all of our internet activity, whether you like it or not. That's what's happening, and this is how they craft the next stage of manipulation, and this is where we're going. So we have to be able to recognize within ourselves what these patterns are, so that they are not being used against us. So as we move through and up our own energetic polarity, our own vertical axis of power, we are touching upon in our heart space again this real worry about what's coming in a material way that is certainly going to cause some confusion, as we see our Prince of Swords reversed here. But what do we have at the top? So we have another royal court card in the roses. Yesterday it was the King of Roses reversed, but now this is, hail the divine feminine. This is coming through so strongly, at least for me personally. And now I'm seeing that it's really coming through strongly just in general, right? Is the Queen of Roses. You can see that she's very focused on this rose petal that she's holding, and she's surrounded by them. Now, what's different about the king? He was in an open garden. She is in a tower that is surrounded by the walls of her castle, and she's up in an elevated position, whereas the king was in the garden on the ground as well. So there's something to be said for being contained. It's very Cancerian, of course, very much. When we start talking about the spider, this will make even more sense in terms of creating and weaving our own web of security, safety, and sustenance and nourishment. But the Queen of Roses is showing us that we can really put our attention to being loving, supportive. There is a relationship that deepens and becomes more meaningful. And there's a very happy resolution in some ways with someone, but it's not coming from the action of the king, but much more about the reception of the queen, right? To be in connection, to hold the space for that connection, to allow for the relationship to deepen, not necessarily to act upon it. And it is still loving and supportive and passionate. And this does suggest that we may resolve something within ourselves to allow us to align with this role. There is someone in our life that may fulfill this role that we will have a deepening relationship with. There's a happy resolution perhaps that has needed to come forward. Again, here's our notice of our abundance, the Three of Cups, right? Coming together. And so we can really focus, and we're focusing our attention, our conscious attention is on this identity. And this identity, maybe seeing it out in our life, maybe somebody stepping into this role perhaps, but it's really about the deepening and the meaningful, right? How meaningful this relationship is. And of course, it makes sense that we would start to worry about losing things in the future as we are becoming also very aware of these loving connections and these deepening relationships and the meaning of them as well. So this is also where our attention is, and at the root, knowing that we have accepted the gift or the guidance of really consciously falling out of our old patterns. This is really going to allow us to step into this particular role or identity. And she really is, the relationships are deepening as a result of holding the space and making the connection and being open to the connection, right? The Queen of Roses. So what we find here moving forward, though, is there lots of confusion. I mean, the Prince of Swords in and of itself, versions of the big version pulling the chariot, and it seems kind of, it's definitely balanced. There's balance here, like it's not chaotic, but the chaos seems to be woven over top of all of this. And the prince, has got the sword kind of behind its back because it just seems kind of distorted and contorted in some ways. And so when you have the Prince of Swords, right, another court card, so this is embodying, this is an identity, we find that, pure manifestation of mind and intellect. This is what this represents. So, I mean, we find ourselves manifesting mind and intellect right into our own identity. But when it's reversed, I mean, it's already even upright. It's very easy for this character to become unstable and unreliable and extremely moody because it's the air of the air. There's nothing to ground it. There's no emotional compassion, and there's no fire to initiate anything. It's just mind and mind, it's just our own ego and our own consciousness pulling us around. And so at the worst of this is becoming a master of disguise, cheating and tricking ourselves. This is oh boy. And other people in our lives or other individuals that are part of this or representing this, again, being masters of disguise, of deceit and of cheating, and can, at the very worst, being very malicious and harsh. And so we are, in fact, I think we can easily become this harsh and malicious and very unstable and unreliable person, or we may find ourselves interfacing with somebody that represents this, as a result of really worrying about and being very cognizant and aware of material crisis that is, coming in the future, however that really manifests itself. It's part of, obviously, the controlled demolition in some ways that we are experiencing, and the awakening process in general. So what we are going now to, these two came out together. So I read them as they were, and they came out together. So we do see this, but then we have the most pure representation of the mind, which is the star card, the Aquarius card, right? Number 17. I love this card. As above, so below, right? The starlight that this figure is bathing herself in, and she in herself is even in a physical, right? So the Prince of Swords, look at this for a minute, right? How this individual is contorted in some ways, and it doesn't look comfortable, and it looks kind of messed up. But it also, when we look at the star, though, it's beautiful alignment with this as above, so below, right? And bathing herself in starlight, and also offering it, right? The water bearer is what Aquarius represents. And so when we get the star card, we identify that this is the guiding light, to have trust and optimism in, and hope and trust in balance and nature and harmony, a sensitive understanding of cosmic coherence, right? It's not so much that we are applying our knowledge, but being in alignment with nature and with the cosmos and feeling the coherence within us, right? And a confidence in nature in particular. This is the highest order of Aquarius, is confidence in nature, a guiding light. So even if we find ourselves confused, unstable, unreliable, extremely moody, perhaps being cheated, maybe even deceiving ourselves in order to stay in our old karmic patterns, and also too other people fulfilling this, what we also have the option of aligning with is this hope and this trust and this guiding light of the star card. This is a really it's showing us the two different ways we can focus here, as we still have the North Node in Gemini before it moves into conjunction with Alcyon, because then we're going to get a real clear view into the mirror at that point. And we need to decide what we're going to, what we want to see. Do we want to be this and see this confusion and all of this, or do we want to see the guiding light? Do we want to be in alignment and have confidence in nature and be in alignment with cosmic coherence? I think that we all probably would really identify more with the star card. And there's no getting around worrying about the future. We all do it. And it allows us to be very realistic about what we do have and how we can work with what we do have now and be very clever, right? Clever Mercury is, clever is Mercury. So we learn to reconsider our values and maybe work with what we do have. But which role are we going to align ourselves with is the real question here. So some guidance points for all of this. Number 1, the Buddha prepares. Number 13, this is pretty simple in terms of, we have chosen, I think, to accept the work and the gift of separating ourselves from our old karmic patterns, right? Aligning with a whole new cycle of growth. But this is really, we still have some work to do. It's still important that we are taking the time to prepare ourselves on the inside. So a time of inner preparation. It's time to reach within to find our purpose and our direction and our power. So again, this falling out of the karmic trench in some ways is not fully manifested yet because it's at this subconscious level. And so we're still working. So you don't want to jump the gun here or get too ahead of yourself. Let the things percolate a little bit and give yourself the opportunity to work with them within. There's some messages that have been coming through for me, and this is just a personal example, that have not been very clear yet, but are starting to coalesce into some clarity, and it's requiring that we get deeper into ourselves. And again, this is why I've initiated my own protocol of attunements and the fasting, because this is a great way to do this. And then the grouse, we've talked about the grouse, and it's coming up a lot. So express yourself through rhythm and movement by drumming and dancing. And it's really about connecting to the heartbeat of the planet and tapping into the universal rhythm of the cosmos. And this was very strongly brought forward with Venus and Capricorn yesterday, very much so in the last 2 days, that Venus, who represents our ability to physically align with everything else around us in the material world, to be in alignment and attunement to the natural rhythm. Just in and of itself, Venus is our sensitivity to that. And so we've had a good opportunity to really tap into that alignment if we haven't already, or to refamiliarize ourselves with it, or maybe go a little bit deeper. And the grouse is our animal message to find the modalities that allow us to connect. Dancing, drumming, connecting into the Schumann energetically. Again, here's that Earth Star chakra. Really important to connect into this energetically in our practice. So I know for me, I've been kind of just dancing around the house every couple hours with whatever music. I haven't gotten the drum out in a really long time, and so I might do that as well. It's really about connecting into rhythm, right? Because what is rhythm? It's an oscillation. It's a time. It's a wave function of, just like time is, just like other sounds are. That's rhythm is the first thing that we interacted with when we were in the womb is the heartbeat of the mother. So connecting to the heartbeat of the planetary mother is a good way to do this as well. So moving, this is what's going on under the surface in the subconscious, where we're drawing our power from, is this rhythm and this inner preparation. Now the spider, when we're talking about that Queen of Roses, the spider. Now it says, trust the creative spark you're feeling and express it through writing stories that inspire and enlighten. That's a great way to do this. It also does represent our ability to weave our own web from ourselves. And the Queen of Roses, she is, in fact, like I said, she's contained in a tower. She's up, up above things. And of course, if you've ever seen a spider web, a lot of times they're in corners that are up above, right? They're not really on the ground, are they? They are up above in corners, in areas that they can hide in, and certainly be away from predators on the ground. This is also about weaving our own sense of security and sustenance and nourishment. All of the things that the spider weaves the web for, right, is to sustain itself, to have protection, all of those things. And it's very feminine, right? Very feminine medicine with the spider. So the Queen of, this is where our attention is to kind of start consolidating our own world that's immediately around us, that's very based in our family ties, our relational ties, the people that around us that we feel committed to and that are committed to us, right? All these Cancerian energies, but it's really about, we hold within us the ability to weave our reality that allows us, and I think this is really important when we start talking about worrying about material future. And so I'm not, however this manifests for you, but it seems very relational and emotional because we have the Queen of Roses, and the spider is very feminine energy and potent medicine, right? A lot of times if you've gotten bit by a spider, there is something about that area that you've been bitten, or in general, some medicinal aspects that need to be brought to our awareness, and like from a shamanic perspective. So also too, the Six of Keys is reversed. It also suggests that rather than a time of the we're technically still in the waxing moon because we haven't gotten to the full moon yet, but because it's going to be eclipsed, when this is reversed, again, this is a time of consolidation, right? We are not necessarily got a ton of abundance when this card is reversed. It is a time of decrease, a time of ebbing. The energy in the creative flow may feel tight or less, and it's important that we conserve energy rather than spend it on what? Futile actions. We saw that yesterday with the reading too, the futility and the dreaminess and kind of the dissipation and the waste of our vital energy on something that isn't actually going to, it's wasting it rather than actually applying it to something that's going to hold us. So now with Mercury, I think we have a little bit more of an awareness cognitively and in our consciousness of what it is that's holding us together. And this is also expressing how important it is that we are consolidating our energy, that we are realizing that we're weaving the capacity to weave our own web of reality, that it's coming through our relationships in some way, or the health and wellness of our emotional relationships, even to ourself, and to be very focused on that, right? To be very focused on the consolidation of what is actually important to us, right? Because otherwise, if we don't have a sense of what that is, and we start worrying, and we are sitting in our heart about worrying about the future, then we will align with this Prince of Swords that's reversed, that is all over the place, and in fact is trying desperately to be deceitful or cheating or anything like that. We do need to acknowledge what's really important to us, and this may require that we consolidate, and to really put our focus on that is in this consolidation to what is truly important, and our ability to really create a very strong web of reality for ourselves. So really, really powerful, very powerful, but ultimately very optimistic reading. But it's also, I mean, it's pretty clear that we're about to come into a very constricting period of time, and that our real power is being generated from our ability to not walk the same karmic path again, right? And many of us are getting a lot of input and a lot of guidance in our intuition and in our dream state, I would say, to how to not do this and to maybe actually make real karmic changes in our previous timelines, right? And shift things around, right? Because we are moving towards this event horizon, no matter what you do about it. How we experience it and how we pop out the other side is really a function of all of this work. So we're gonna move on here to the astrology, because there's some pretty awesome stuff happening today. Here is our centaur. Ooh, I can't wait to express or to share this with you. Where Vesta is today. So I'm checking in with the chat right now. The Biden admin is buying. Oh yeah, they're talking about buying things, stripping the topsoil. Yeah, Ice Age Farmer is great. I am a big fan of Ice Age Farmer. He is very meticulous and very realistic as well. I'm feeling that too, that the tower was the redo of that 1111 time wave, some kind of reconfiguration of old wounds by seeing it within a new juxtaposition. If that makes total sense. Like, that's exactly what I'm experiencing in my own way. It's like a redo. You know, it's like the Atlantean timeline has now been not only folded over, but it's blasted. That time wave, or like a gravitational wave, is blasted through that opening of 1111. So this is why it's so much more important now than it ever has been to be very discerning, to make sure you know exactly where you stand, because there's going to be so many very attractive things that are going to come into our awareness that are going to be like, oh, I see now that this is really a good thing. And that's for all of us to really come to on our own. And if we are not doing this work, this redo, or going back into old timelines and like actually doing the energetic work to reconfigure them, or at least pull ourselves out of the trench, then we're going to be susceptible to what is being offered as like this shiny new thing. And I really, and I've talked about this before with the certain people's charts being aligned with this full moon lunar eclipse, and what it's high ritual time, and what usually happens at full moon lunar eclipses in terms of those who are who practice and worship the material realm, and how they practice their magic at this time, this dark magic. So I do feel like there will be some sort of I'd be really shocked, honestly, if we are not presented with what seems like that we're moving in the right direction, but that's also been part of the control mechanism to begin with. And this is why it's going to be really important, very, very important. I can't stress enough how important it is to not fall into the old trap, because you're just like, oh, this seems really good. This actually seems like where we should be going. Within a new juxtaposition. That does make sense to me. It's a really potent time right now, and we really want to call on those who truly have our highest good, because if we have to do the heavy lifting as humans on this planet. Anybody that's offering some sort of easy way out, even if it seems like a really good, even if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So I feel like that's going to be presented to all of us. And at the same time, I do also feel like that there will be plenty to worry about. And so again, the worry and the concern and like really being scared of what we're losing is a perfect way to draw people into a false projection, because that's all it is a false projection of a matrix, not the real organic timeline that we're meant to be on. So thank you for your comments, guys. This is really good. So let's move into the charts for today, so that we can see that what we're dealing with in actual our fourth dimensional map here. So our moon is in Aries and is going to move into Taurus today. So I'm going to move over again to my notes, and thank you for being patient about that. All right. I mean, I never know how these transmissions are really going to go ever. That's kind of the whole point. But I do have, it's kind of like the readings. I'm exactly the same way. I do all the prep, and then it's in the moment of the experience where the real channeling comes through. So let's see here. We are going to start with, like I said, we're going to start with our moon in Aries. So the first thing I actually want to show you before we get into that is this chart here. Because what we're going to see today, I know I really don't like, there's some settings I got to work with, guys, so just bear with me here. We won't spend a lot of time on this chart in particular, just because, number one, it's like blinding me with how light it is, and I'm sure there's some filters that I can work with here in the to get it not looking like this. But in the meantime, what I want to show you is Black Moon Lilith hours ago, this morning, actually, at about 8 o'clock, 8:15 Eastern Standard Time, Black Moon Lilith, the true Lilith, right? Not the average Lilith, but the actual Lilith that oscillates back and forth, was in conjunction with Rahu, or the North Node. So we see that here. So that's something that I want to address, as well as the fact that asteroid Vesta is in conjunction now with Alpha Centauri. So Alpha Centauri starseeds, I know you're out there. This is really important because Vesta, so Vesta is the flame, the eternal flame at the center of any union, any collective situation, any relationship, any type of community, any of it. And she represents mostly her priestesses, the Vestal virgins, the priestesses that were free from all other responsibilities and truly free in their society to be the priestesses of this temple. And their job is to maintain the flame, the eternal flame. So she's moved into Sagittarius now and is in conjunction with Alpha Centauri. This is our closest stellar neighbor. Alpha Centauri is roughly 4.5 light years away. And I'm going to go into that when we talk about what this fixed star represents and what Alpha Centauri starseeds represent, because this is really, really important to keep in mind as we go through this. But we're going to start here with Lilith and Rahu, because Lilith and Rahu, because we are, hold on one second, guys. Here we go. I guess I can't put this over top, so I can't put this, for whatever reason, it won't actually show over top of the window. So, oh well, that's okay. You've seen enough of my face for most of this. So what we're going to look at here, the fact that these two are conjunct and were conjunct before we move into the moon transits, because, I mean, these are all related to the moon, right? Black Moon Lilith is that point on the other side of that point that's between the Earth and the apogee of the moon's orbit around the Earth, that part that's the furthest away in the moon's orbit, because we have an elliptical orbit. Black Moon Lilith is the space in between those things. So Lilith is has to do with the moon. Obviously, Rahu is the nodal is the north node of the moon, so that's related to the moon. And then we have this moon in Aries. So this is actually very connected, very karmic on a soul level, and is related to a part of ourselves that's so intimately connected to this planet and to the divine feminine in general, that it's that self-preservation, dark feminine that we don't even recognize exists until we acknowledge that part of ourselves. So these two coming together in conjunction today is there is a deep part of ourselves that is allowing us to connect to our soul's karmic journey of where we're headed. And right now, it has to do with being open to receive the blessings, and to see them as kind of, I don't want to say reward, but that's the words that are used in the Sabian symbol, but I don't really like that characterization. It's more of like when you are open to, when you look in the mirror, right? The karmic mirror, for instance, right? Or you look in the mirror, let's use the never-ending story again, or any type of story where there is some sort of magic mirror. You look into the mirror. That is the first degree. That is Alcyon, right? You look into the mirror, right? The second degree of Gemini is that you receive the reflection back to you. So in a way that is either a blessing or a curse, but it is what you have chosen to do, which is to look into the mirror, to acknowledge that first moment of like, I am separate from the world around me, but there's always a mirror image. There's always a reflection back to us of who we are. This is the whole essence of Gemini. So making this connection today with Black Moon Lilith and Rahu, I mean, there is something very deeply ingrained in us in terms of this direction. It's giving us the impetus and the drive to just accept what we are looking at in the mirror. And since the nodes naturally move in a counterclockwise or clockwise direction, right? They're going clockwise around the chart, whereas the chart moves counterclockwise in relation to our fixed position on Earth. We're going to be moving. It's like we're already looking at and accepting the mirror image, and soon as the nodes descend essentially back into 0 degrees and Alcyon, this is when we'll actually be looking in the mirror. So this moment where we're just kind of accepting the reflection is like we're getting so deeply into ourselves of what that reflection is, so much deeper than even our own subconscious, right? And this really is connecting to these very deep karmic patterns that are coming back around to be released. And it's like when Lilith's involved, if we are aware of what that part of us is, then we can utilize it in its proper fashion without it really destroying our relationship to everything else. Because the drive for self-preservation and almost the animalistic tendency here is so strong that if we're not aware and we don't acknowledge this part of ourselves, it takes over and acts out in a way that's not actually good for the whole being, just for the expression of that angry activist within us. And so there's something here when these two come together, very deep, very karmic, and it's allowing it to come up to a soul awareness that we need to be ready to see the reflection, right? Because that's where it's headed. And so sometimes this could backfire, or in many ways, right? This is why the Buddha prepares is so important right now, and the ability to connect into the heartbeat. And this is where Lilith can really act as an ally, is because that is what she represents, our ability to connect into the heartbeat of the planet, of the grid itself, and of the divine feminine nature. And so Lilith does have a very strong connection to Kali too, I would say. So that's something we have to keep in mind as well, is that it's not always going to be fluffy when it comes to the divine feminine. There is a blood-drinking demon goddess that Kali represents that is just as much part of this as anything else. So what are we going to be offering up to the goddess in this instance and part of our karmic journey? Well, I think an awareness and a definitive decision to be ready to gaze into the mirror and accept what we see. This is very much part of our journey right now. So this is very powerful, and this came out first thing this morning. So let's look at our moon transits, because we got Pluto involved today, we got the sun involved today, we have Pluto and the sun involved with each other today, of course, and we have Eris. Oh boy, the goddess of discord is very much blowing that golden apple right into our awareness. And geez, if we are going to be as foolish as all of those other deities to fight over who the fairest is, well, I would say that we are going to be just as confused as that Prince of Swords reversed really is. So let's talk about it. Number one, we're going to, oops, let me move this around. So we see here, number one, that the moon in Aries is in a sextile to Jupiter in Aquarius. By the way, the star card is referenced by Jupiter in Aquarius as well. And so there's something very powerful about the expansion of all there is being our guiding light, and Jupiter in some ways does represent and advocate for the collective paradigm and the belief systems, right? Rules heaven. That's Jupiter's role, or Zeus is to defend heaven. He really doesn't care about Earth as much as his responsibility is in the upper realms and keeping us all in line. So that's Jupiter's role is much more about the broad belief systems, the horizons, and the big picture. So, but Jupiter in Aquarius is referencing the star card, our guiding light in some ways. And so the moon in that sextile today, which was happening, this morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we find that this is the very same degree that the moon is in conjunction with Eris, the dwarf planet Eris. Eris is out past Pluto. Eris has an orbit of like 500 plus years, so it's even longer than Pluto is representing, the goddess of discord, right? Rolling that golden apple into the party that she was not invited into, and then they all look like idiots fighting over it and laughing in the background going, you can't keep chaos out. It's part of how the universe finds homeostasis and balance. And when you try to keep it out, it'll find its expression somewhere else. That's for sure. So this is the very same degree that the moon is in a conjunction with Eris and is in a sextile to Jupiter. So this particular degree is very much about the openness to the influx of spiritual energies. We talked about this yesterday as we were protected. Now it's full on as we conjunct with Eris. And so the chaos that has the capacity to be directly blown into our immediate personal life with the moon and into our emotional landscape is like the wind blowing the curtains open and takes the shape of a cornucopia. That is the Sabian symbol, 24 degrees Aries. So it's an openness to the influx of spiritual energies, and it could very well, with Eris involved, be very chaotic. And so the individual consciousness is receiving more concentrated influx of this spiritual energy, and it enables the consciousness to extend its scope of awareness. But what happens when it's a chaotic influx? That's something to consider. And the sextile to Jupiter, while this is happening, is our opportunity to reconcile this with this particular guiding light that has to do with being able to overcome our passions, to teach wisdom from our own experience. So it's however this manifests itself, and if it's already done so in your astral world or in your dream state, what we're seeing here is a really good opportunity in this moment that even if there is an influx of spiritual chaos or some sort of event or some type of stimuli that comes in, or number of events that come in to really disrupt and throw us off emotionally, intuitively, and trying to decide what it is that is actually coming into our awareness. There's something that we can invest where Jupiter is, right? Jupiter in Aquarius, the guiding light, the ability to overcome the passions, right? Because that's what happened. She rolled the apple into the party. It said, to the fairest. They all started arguing because they thought it was them. and then the whole party is just like disrupted and ruined, and they're all fighting with each other, right? And so if we cannot even engage that for just a moment and be able to actually take our cue from this Jupiter and Aquarius sextile, we can actually teach, or even just teach ourselves or become aware within our own nature how to reconcile this and actually see it as a teachable moment. I think that that's a really strong way to make the use out of this sextile with Jupiter, the moon and Jupiter in Aries in particular. So as we move on through our moon transits today, I talked about Vesta in conjunction to Sagittarius, so we'll get to that at the end with Alpha Centauri. And then the moon is going to square the sun, or square Pluto. Oh boy. They're going to square Pluto, and then is this very same time come into a quincunx with the sun, which means the sun is in a sextile to Pluto. So let's unpack this a little bit. Number one, this sextile to Pluto, right? The sun is, we're really finding our voice, right? And we're finding our expression and our consciousness and our conscious expression by being able to see into the underlying structure and of what manifests all life, right? This is the title of today's transmission, is being able to, our voice, our vibration, our sense of self, and our sense of passion is like an X-ray machine, and it's able to get into the underlying structures of things. The sextile to Pluto in this moment, again, is an opportunity to invest this energy into what in fact is being destroyed, so that we can actually see into what is the underlying structure. And maybe what we're finding is being, utilized to destroy things at a functional, structural, institutional level in Capricorn. We have the opportunity to actually see what is underlying the manifestations of all life, if not the actual culture and societal institutions that we take for granted as making up our reality. So Pluto's taking it away in its demolition, controlled or not. It's still here in Capricorn, at least in the astrology, like Western astrology, and we can again find a harmonious investment here into our own conscious expression and our voice, that the vibration itself is able to actually break down and get to the underlying structure of life, right? These two things are able to really support and harmonize with each other. And then we reconcile and move forward from there. Or move, not even forward. We have all the options of where to go next, because we are able to use our own vibration, our voice, our expression, our conscious expression to see into the underlying structures of what's going on. And so that's the sextile. Then you bring the moon into the picture at the same time. So it's in a quincunx to the sun, right? There's that transmutation opportunity, these two aspects that don't seem to be fitting, the 5/12, right? The 5/12, or the 150-degree angle. And also the square to Pluto, right? So we have a square to Pluto from the moon too. So there's going to be, there's one, Pluto is that very deep and raw power of transformation because of the destruction, right? There's that sense of the tower in some ways, but it's the power of what comes next as a result of the destruction. But how we feel in the moment, especially how we feel in terms of our own subjective experience, because that's what Aries represents, is our subjective experience, our ego consciousness, the spark of life in a square to Pluto, in a quincunx to the sun. So it really, those two things, the sun and Pluto, are able to really harmonize with each other and make an investment that allows reconciliation. But the moon is really throwing a wrench in all of this, because how we feel in this moment is the possibility to gain experience at two levels of being, right? In this moment, there's the revelation of new potential. And this is not, number one, the square to Pluto is just this overwhelmingly powerful moment of destruction, making it very difficult to align ourselves with the revelation of new potentials within our own being, with our own subjective experience. The quincunx to the sun, I think, is where we actually transmute, whereas the square is just like, this is uncomfortable. So just lean into it and see what you learn about yourself and how you relate to this this process. The quincunx, or the 150-degree angle to the sun, is where we really transmute in this moment, because the X-ray, we're really finding our voice by being able to see into what's going on under the surface, like being able to penetrate into the underlying structure and see it for what it is. At the same time, we're feeling into our own identity and the revelation of who we are stepping into this next phase. The quincunx is just, especially with the sun and the moon, right? Because it's the polarity within each of us, how we feel and how we express ourselves outwardly, how we feel on the inside, what we say on the outside, how we express on the outside. These two things don't fit together, because one has to do with getting to what underlies with our own identity developing. So what do? Well, I mean, this is happening. This already happened, in terms of time frame, and it was just this momentary connection. I think that the transmutation is really going to come from the acceptance of both of these which ironically is really where the moon is, the acceptance of new potential by being in two places at once. It's hard to feel into that when we are actively and consciously expressing ourselves by acknowledging what's happening under the surface. What are the secrets, right? What is the underlying structure that holds everything together? What is the power of our manifestation abilities, and what's going on underneath? It's actually the glue that's holding it all together. While we're finding our voice through the expression and the acknowledgement of that, there's something very deep within us that is like, it's time to change now. It's time to start stepping into a new potential. So those things don't seem to fit together, but we have to figure out how to, and that's up to each of us individually. And that has a lot to do with where these aspects are in your chart. For me, this, just as an example, I mean, this is full transparency. I don't care. Some people want to be more private about their chart, and that's fine, but that's not what I'm here to do. So I'll just use my chart as an example. I mean, the sun's sitting right on my midheaven right now, and then is in a quincunx to my third house cusp, which is Andromedan, right? We're getting into Andromedan territory now. And so the individual and feeling-based nature of myself and my own development, and especially in my immediate environment, and what I say, how I express myself, what I know, what I think I know, is in this interim period, whereas the sun is very distinctly in my career house right now. So you can see how these things don't seem to fit, and we have to figure out a way to make them fit, or to transmute them so that they do fit. This is can seem like we're splitting ourselves off, and we could do that, right? We can compartmentalize. That's one way to do this, is to completely compartmentalize these two things. But I think it's way more powerful to find how we square the circle, right? Find our material and structure around our infinite self in this moment. So I'll let you know how it goes. And I'm curious how other people are addressing this as well. And when that happens, then we find hours later is when the moon comes into Taurus, right? Comes into the first degree of Taurus, which is, the moon's exalted in Taurus. This is familiar territory. The moon is very powerful in Taurus. And the first thing it's going to do is make a connection. Not only, I'll pop over to here real quick. Not only is it going to come into a quincunx with Vesta in the first degree of Sagittarius, but it's also going to come into a trine with Juno that is now in the first degree of Capricorn. Okay, Juno, that closed system of balance in our relationships that represents that there is, for every every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and sometimes it is born out of our own sense of wanting to have revenge or balance the scales, or we're reacting to betrayal, because Juno would respond that way when there was a disruption in their marriage contract. So what's the first degree of Taurus? It's a clear mountain stream. It's a clear mountain stream. And so when we align ourselves with like fully unadulterated, pure flow of the natural world, this can really align with its time, you know, the crystallization of our, you know, stepping into a position of power within ourselves, within our community, wherever you find Juno and, you know, and Capricorn, right? So for Aquarius, for instance, Capricorn is your 12th house. And so there is, and Taurus is the 4th house. So, and that's not exact, that's like whole sign astrology. So you know that when you come into a clear, unadulterated stream and flow in the house that the moon normally rules, which is the 4th house, which is, again, that's the home and family. That's our inner life. That's our deep core self. When we are in alignment with that, in a pure way, we do step into our responsibility and a sense of balance in terms of the collective, unconscious collective, or the transpersonal or transcendental collective, right? That's the 12th house, coming around to step into balance, right? It's time to be balanced and step into our latent potential to be in a position of leadership within that particular area. So but Vesta, so this is a great segue into Vesta. It's a quincunx to Vesta, which is in conjunction with Alpha Centauri. So let's look at that, Alpha Centauri, because this is a very interesting fixed star. So first, one way to look at this is, well, it's also considered Rigel Kentaurus. So here is Alpha Centauri. It's in the left knee of the centaur, right? And the centaur does represent Sagittarius to a certain extent. It also represents Chiron as well, the wounded healer, but also the archer of Sagittarius is represented by the centaur as well. And there's a juxtaposition, speaking of which, right? The top half being humanoid, the bottom half being the horse. And this, you can see that this is leading forward. So Alpha Centauri is our closest, here, I'm going to bring myself back into the picture here. Alpha Centauri is our closest galactic, or not galactic, our closest stellar neighbor. So Alpha Centauri, about 4.5 light years away. It's technically a trinary star, but the big one in Centauri is a binary star. So very close to the same spectral class as our own sun. It's 2, and then Proxima Centauri is a red dwarf that's a little bit further away, but they're still have a central point of gravity that makes them a trinary star system. So they are all kind of revolving around a center point. But it's Alpha Centauri that's the 2 bigger ones that are very close to each other. And there are exoplanets that have been discovered around Alpha Centauri, and I do believe one of them is in the habitable zone in terms of, planets and what they look for water, liquid water to be on the surface. That's how they determine it. And it's a specific distance away from the sun so that it has the right, all of the right conditions for life to habitate. So that's what it means. And so Alpha Centauri star seeds, fits really well into the Vesta archetype, because what we are going to be addressing here is, let's see here. I want to make sure I read it right. So it is the 3rd brightest star in the night sky, Alpha Centauri, because it is so close. Ptolemy is another name for it as well as what would we say here? Rigel Kentaurus, or Ptolemy, Toliman, Toliman, or Alpha Centauri. So this is there's a lot of different meanings here to this. So from a fixed star perspective, in like ancient astrology, right? If you were to read this in like a natal chart or in somebody's, more of a horary astrology, right? Ancient astrology that's meant to be more predictive of what's coming, you're going to find that this is really connected to beneficence and friends and refinement and a position of honor. Okay. And so, it actually seems, according to this, there's an added peculiarity that relationships with females, there's our Queen of Roses, often seems spoiled, or an existing happy relationship is stricken by exceptional circumstances. So it really depends on how it's positioned. So we're not going to get too meaning. And what we want to look at is how the general theme here of this particular star of Alpha Centauri and how it relates to star seeds from Alpha Centauri star system. So there's a lot of enthusiasm for causes that they embrace, and there's a lot of self-sacrificing about it, which is very related to the Alpha Centaurian star seeds. There's a provider type of protector and provider type of dynamic that comes with these star seeds, and it's very much part of also just the fixed star in general in ancient astrology. So you can see how these things are linked together. So, and it again, friends, refinement, a position of honor. There's something self-sacrificing about it because you embrace a cause, and there is a this star rules 2 inches below the navel in the human body. Well, that's interesting that's the sacral chakra area, below the navel in your lower abdominal area, in your sacral area, or your pelvic bowl, perhaps. This is what this star rules. And so we find this connection right now to the star. So Vesta is the goddess that is the hearth flame that sustains the community, sustains the family, is the everlasting flame, and she represents her priestesses, right? So Alpha Centauri has this connection to provider, protector, embracing causes, being self-sacrificing about it, right? Giving of ourselves, being of service, and the meaning of it is so important, especially as it moves into Sagittarius. The meaning of it and how that ignites people, the meaning of it and how it ignites people to act. And when we're talking about our sacral chakra area, again, this is the seat of our own creation power, is in the sacral area. This is where the Kundalini is coiled and released from. And this cannot be overstated, I feel like, in terms of our service, right? What is our service? What are we here to really do? And I feel like that we are going to really start acknowledging how we can embrace causes, how we can step up to be, especially Alpha Centaurian starseeds. They're really going to be activated now in terms of embracing a cause, being, kind of self-sacrificing about it, to provide, to protect, and to do it from a place that has to do with our seat of creation. That place just below the navel, right? And having a lot of enthusiasm for these causes as well. It's very, very strong. And so we find that what the meaning behind whatever it is that we're stepping into, and the strength of it, and the eternal flame is so important that it literally brings people together to create societies or to instigate a war. It could go either way. But what we're finding here is that a really renewed and very activated sense of identifying a cause and embracing it and giving yourself completely to it, to the point where you realize that there is so much meaning here. with Alpha Centauri. So the Alpha Centauri and starseeds tend to really step into these types of positions just normally, and when you just figure out where it is in your chart that this particular starseed perspective or this particular starseed signature, how it is expressed or where it's expressed, is going to tell you the area of your life where you're finding yourself really getting into the causes that you have a lot of enthusiasm for. And I just feel like now that we are really, we're being asked in some ways to start stepping forward to embody the enthusiasm for these causes, and realizing that they are going to be the flame that holds us all together, and to be truly of service in terms of this, whatever this represents for us. So I just wanted to bring attention to that, since Vesta moved into this position yesterday and into today, and now is moving into Sagittarius. So from the last degree of Scorpio, which was kind of like another one of those, it's another, last degree of Scorpio is really another one of those release valves socially. And then you come into Sagittarius, which is in fact, the flame of meaning, the spark of meaning that draws people together to start acting in accordance to what they believe and what they value. And this is getting activated too. So there's a double-edged sword here, right? This is again about looking into the mirror and accept what you see, because depending on what it is that we align with in terms of our belief system and values is what we're going to start really acting on. And so it's powerful no matter what. So we have to be aware of that too, with Black Moon Lilith meeting Rahu, or the North Node, today as well, that we want to know exactly where that spear is going to be pointed with this centaur. Because if we're not aware, if we are misled, if we are finding ourselves kind of seduced in some ways by certain things that seem really good but are actually part of the false matrix or not part of the organic timeline, then we could find ourselves expelling our energy towards something that is not going to be in our highest good. So it really does depend on where we find ourselves aligned and where that meaning is really coming from. So important to keep in mind as we go through all this crazy intense stuff today. So Moon will move into Taurus today. We're really going to start wanting to kind of nestle down into our own environment and feel good about it. That's also a big part of the Moon in Taurus, right? Netflix and chill, right? Get your onesie out, making really good food and being very cozy and comfortable emotionally too, in our relationships, in what we feel. That's a big part of the Moon coming into Taurus. So it'll be certainly relaxing, I think, to a certain extent, and we kind of are going to settle in just for a moment, but we have to make sure that we are not losing ourselves in that process, and that we are very aware of what we're settling into and what that feels like to us. Because if it's false, then when I say false, right, I mean like not the organic timeline. And there's so much riding on us accepting some sort of inorganic timeline that it'll look like what we think is a good thing. And so that's coming through very strongly. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's plenty of time to be on this transmission today. So thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm going to bring myself back to full screen here, at least partially. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I really mean that. If you find this work really valuable, you can actually share that value back by subscribing through Subscribestar. That's in the description box below for $3 a month. There's going to be subscriber exclusive content that's coming, specifically like horoscopes and sign, astrology by sign, that's going to be only available to subscribers, and other types of special reports as well that's I'm going to make available. So it's definitely in your interest, if you want to keep going along this pathway, to make the contribution and subscribe. It's only $3 a month. So I think that's pretty good for all of this content. The transmissions are still my offering. They're going to stay available that way. And also too, if you want to book a reading, I'm offering the eclipse reading now for $99. It's 90 minutes of a recording for the eclipse season for your chart in particular. You can book through catalystenergies.net, or you can email me directly. There is going to be a flyer that's going to be coming out soon. I'm going to be recording the actual report for the eclipse season either today or tomorrow, so that'll be part of the offering. I'm going to be putting that out on the platforms, and all of this is in the description box below, so you can access Facebook, Telegram, you can access my email, and you can certainly access the website as well and check that out. I have lots and lots of testimonials on my website, so if you want to get a sense of my work and you haven't really yet, that's a good place to go check out what other people are saying. So I appreciate you guys so much. I love you. Have a great day. I hope everybody is doing well. Please take very good care of yourselves. Initiate some sort of practice in order to really sharpen your discernment and deepen your intuition, because it's really important. Netflix and chill means something very different in some circles. Oh, let's talk about that. At some point, maybe, because I'm curious what you mean about that. And I have a feeling I already know what that means. So, but I'm I'm curious about that. So, my friends, thank you so much for being here. We'll be in touch tomorrow for the Daily Medicine transmission. And thank you for your input. Thank you for your comments, your subscriptions, your likes. It all actually means quite a bit. And we will connect tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless you. Bye.